The gospel reading is from Luke chapter 19. Jesus went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. When he had come near Bethphage and Bethany, at the place called the Mount of Olives, he sent 2 of the disciples, saying, "Go into the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find tied there a colt that has never been ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' just say this, 'The Lord needs it.'" So those who were sent departed and found it as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, its owners asked them, "Why are you untying the colt?" They said, "The Lord needs it." And they brought it to Jesus, and after throwing their cloaks on the colt, they set Jesus on it. As he rode along, people kept spreading their cloaks on the road. As he was now approaching the path down from the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of the disciples began to praise God joyfully with a loud voice for all the deeds of power that they had seen, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven." Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, order your disciples to stop." He answered, "I tell you, if these were silent, the stones would shout out." So, one of the things that Martha and I often have to do in the office is to edit announcements and information that people send us to put in the bulletins and the emails and on the website. Because often people send us very detailed descriptions of what's about to happen, but it's just kind of too long. In some respects, it is great that people include all of this information because it shows that they are excited and interested in the thing that is about to take place. But sometimes that means folks include details that probably don't need to be there. So if I were copy editing today's processional gospel reading, I would probably take out all of this stuff about untying the colt. Because after all, did the disciples really expect that there'd just be a colt wandering around in the middle of the village? And since you don't have that much space on a scroll to work with, couldn't Luke have set the same story up a little bit more efficiently? I mean, he could have summarized Jesus' saying like this: "Go into the village, and when you come to the first colt you see, bring it here." So the disciples did, and they set Jesus on it. See how much tighter and to the point? I mean, people will read that stuff. That's why you edit things like this. But instead, we have all this stuff about the colt being tied up. So you find a colt tied up, and if anybody asks you, you have to say, "This is why you're untying the colt." And then they go in there, and the people say to them, "Why are you untying the colt?" "Well, because..." And the whole thing, it takes up 5 verses. And so I wonder, is this just a waste of space? I mean, Luke seems to be pretty careful about the way he tells the story of Jesus. So I wonder if maybe there is actually something to this untying of the colt. And maybe the untying really isn't so much about the colt as it is about Jesus' mission of untying people. Because it actually seems like Jesus' journey to Jerusalem and what he's about to do there is, in one sense, about untying people from the way things had always been. People came and went from Jerusalem all the time, especially at Passover. But now, Jesus was coming into Jerusalem, and he was doing something new. He was reordering the way things worked and upending the status quo. I mean, literally, right after this story in all the synoptic gospels, Jesus goes in and literally overturns the tables in the temple of the money changers and all that kind of stuff. Everything is that was the way things were supposed to work. Jesus upended it. He was untying people from the way that things had always been. In some respects, Jesus' journey into Jerusalem is about untying people from a sense of resignation to the way the world worked. Because probably a whole lot of folks in Jerusalem, they were doing okay, but they figured however things were going in their lives with the temple authorities and the Romans, just kind of the way the world worked, it was just going to be like that. They weren't really expecting anything to change. And certainly, most of them did not expect that God would intervene in a new way that would make a difference in their lives. And yet, when they saw Jesus ride into town, they experienced something new happening. They were excited and hopeful, so much so that Jesus said the stones would cry out if they suppressed it. Jesus was untying people from feelings of resignation and hopelessness. And, of course, in coming into Jerusalem, Jesus was about to accomplish untying people from death itself. Jesus' mission in Jerusalem was ultimately to conquer death by dying. And by his death and resurrection, Jesus showed that even death was not the end. And that experience untied people, because forever afterwards, Jesus' disciples would be about the process of learning to live in new ways because they were untied from the finality of death. So maybe I shouldn't edit this stuff out. Maybe all this untying is actually important. Maybe it's not just a minor detail. And as we journey with Jesus on this Holy Week, maybe the best question we should ask ourselves is, from what is Jesus untying me? And how is Jesus leading me into new life? I mean, what are the things that have tied us down and prevented us from being people who can rejoice in the new things that God is doing in our lives and live in new ways and into a new time? That is, how is Jesus working in our lives to untie us from the ways that things have always seemed to go for us? Have we been tied up by the way we think things have to be, or even by the ways that we think things are supposed to be? Does the journey to new life begin with being untied from some of those things? How is Jesus working in our lives to untie us from a sense of resignation that life really isn't going to change all that much? Or from the temptation to just go with the flow because we really can't expect to make that much of a difference? Does the journey to new life begin with being untied from that sense of resignation so that we can actually expect a change in our lives or in the world that makes us want to shout out with joy as well? And how is Jesus working in our lives to untie us from the fear of death itself? And that's not always just physical death. Sometimes the desire to preserve status or comfort at all costs keeps us in the grind of our regular old lives instead of looking for the ways of new life that Jesus is leading us into. And often, the journey to new life begins with being untied from all kinds of little deaths that seem to hold us back. So I invite you in this Holy Week to think about these kinds of questions as we follow Jesus to the cross and to the empty tomb. From what is Jesus calling you to be untied? What ties you up and holds you back from following Jesus in new ways? And what kind of journey of new life is Jesus calling you to be a part of? Those are the kinds of questions maybe we should think about as we continue to think about Jesus' journey